Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Planning Commission meeting of the City of Victorville for November 9th, 2022. I will call this meeting to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Cook Askins,
Present.
Commissioner Messin is absent. Commissioner Thomas,
Present.
Vice Chair Herman.
Here.
Chair Kurth.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. If we'll now rise for the invocation that will be led to us by Commissioner Thomas, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening. Father, thanking you for just all your blessings. Thanking you for allowing us to be here to deliberate, and we ask your guidance as we go over the issues that come to us. Father, help us to make decisions that will be for the betterment of this city and its citizens. Father, we ask that you just bring peace in this nation and just cover us, and more especially this area that we call Victorville. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item will be general public comments from the public who would like to address the commission on items that are within our subject matter jurisdiction and not within the rest of our agenda tonight. So this would be general public comments. And the Planning Commission is interested in hearing from the public. Individuals from the public may speak on agenda items not posted on the agenda during the public comment section, provided those items are within the Commission's subject matter jurisdiction. Individual speakers may address the Planning Commission once per public comment period and once per each public hearing item for up to 3 minutes. For those attending the meeting in person, and though not required, please complete a speaker card prior to the start of the meeting and place in the clear speaker card box located on the dais counter. If you'd like to comment on a public hearing item, please submit a speaker's card before the public hearing item is announced. For those attending by Zoom, please click the Raise Your Hand feature located on the Zoom screen. Whether attending this meeting in person or via Zoom, once comments are invited, the speaker will be called on by name and then recognized by the presiding officer. Audience members may not disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of this meeting. So with that, I'll go ahead and open up the hearing for public comments. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to us tonight?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
we do have Joshua Nagar that was just to speak on the non-public hearing item, agenda item number 5.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners, for allowing me to speak tonight and for entertaining the conversation related to item number 5. And thank you, Mr. Webb, for your anticipated report on the same. Again, my name is Joshua. I got the opportunity to speak to you a few months back, and I'm the counsel for the Derby Room, which is an operating restaurant at the fairgrounds in your community. And I'm also director of the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, and I spoke briefly on our proposal to possibly operate a commercial cannabis operation at the fair, in which you asked for Mr. Webb and others to give you more information related to that. So I just wanted to speak to that. We've enjoyed doing business in Victorville. We enjoy Jennifer at the fair, and by and large, the community's been very warm, so we very much appreciate that. But most directly to item 5, we believe the ordinance is written, I've read through it, it was written and dated at a time about 5 or 6 years ago where there was a lot of uncertainty around commercial cannabis, uncertainty as to state regulations, compliance, benefits, safety, you name it. And what we've seen throughout the past 5 or 6 years, I've been in the business the entire time, is that a lot of that concerns or the parade of horribles just didn't manifest. And so a lot of that uncertainty has been made more certain. So I feel like this may be a possible opportunity or time to consider an ordinance amendment And we feel like we're the right partners to maybe consider that in relation to. And what is that small step that I am proposing, or we are proposing? To basically, you're going to have a lot of options or opportunities to do nothing, to do everything, etc. But that can be quite overwhelming. So what we're proposing is a very simple first step to leave the ordinance as is, but just to exempt the fairgrounds for one specific proposal in our use, basically. And I think that's a great idea for three reasons. One, it's a simple first step. You don't have to jump all the way in the pool. You're putting your toe in. But and also, the city will get to gather data without having a direct risk or exposure involved. And I think if the city wanted to take a larger step and do a further amendment, they could, but having that data would be very beneficial. Two, I think it would allow the city to receive economic benefit over and above or analogous to the neighboring city, Adelanto, and would also allow the fairgrounds to receive a benefit. I'm a president of the Fair Foundation in Paris, and due to budget changes, they don't get a lot of money. So I know how important the fair is to this community, and having those benefits accrue would be great. So we think our proposal is to keep the ordinance, but just to modify it as an exemption. And I guess we did turn in a writing, and hopefully, that's gonna, get to your attention at some point. But I think in closing, I thank you for letting me speak. I'd love to answer any questions if that's possible. And I guess what I'm asking for is maybe a motion or vote.
Your time is up.
To move it forward to council. Thank you.
Great, thank you for those comments. And do we have any speakers that are online?
We do not. I do want to note that we had 2 public comments that were received via email earlier today that have been provided to the commission and posted to the city's website.
Okay, thank you. So I'll close the general public comment section. Item number 1 is the approval of a couple of sets of minutes from our September 14th, 2022 and October 12th, 2022 meetings.
Commissioner Thomas moved that the minutes from September 4th, 2022 and October 12th, 2022 be approved.
Commissioner Cook Askin, second.
I have a first by Commissioner Thomas, a second by Commissioner Cook Askins. I'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Cook Askins,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Vice Chair Harriman,
Aye.
Chair Kurth.
Aye.
Motion passes with Commissioner Messin being absent.
Thank you. That'll take us to item number 2 under public hearings. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Chairman Kurth and Commissioner. Item number 2 is case PLAN 21-00034. It is an amendment to the City of Victorville's general plan with an environmental impact report to update the land use element, the safety element, and the creation of a new environmental justice element. This is applicable citywide. And before we get into about a 20-minute presentation on this item, I'd like to go over some housekeeping items. We did have one revision to the agenda that was provided to the commission via email. We've also provided hard copies. There's also copies in the lobby, and it's been posted online. Essentially, these revisions were brought to our attention by our environmental consultant and also our land use and housing consultant. This was related to the fiscal and economic impact analysis. There was some projections made in error based off of existing employment instead of what should have been the forecasted new employment, which skewed some of the numbers, but it did not affect the ultimate projected shortfall in fiscal revenue that we'll discuss later today. Also, in the updated final program EIR, there was just some adding of the data that was not correct in some of the tables. The data was essentially correct, but when it was all added together, some of those numbers did not jive. So those have been all updated in this updated memo and provided for the Planning Commission's consideration. Related to that final program EIR, none of those changes affect the proposed mitigation. So this is just noting some of those errors and making those corrections. And with that, I also would like to read on the record the recommendation tonight. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission conduct a public hearing, receive testimony regarding the proposed project, and take the following actions. First, as I mentioned, staff's recommending that you accept the revisions on the agenda that I just outlined. Also recommend City Council certification and adoption of the attached final program EIR with CEQA findings of fact and statement of overriding consideration and the mitigation monitoring program for the subject general plan amendment, and adopt resolution number P-22-045 recommending City Council approval of the general plan amendment case number PLAN 21-00034 to update the land use element and safety element in the creation of a new environmental justice element of the general plan. And with that, we have our consultant from Harrison Associate, Dima Galkin, on the line, and he could queue up the staff report, and I'm sorry, not the staff report, the slideshow, and we can kick off this presentation. Great. Thank you, Dima. If you want to go to the next slide. All right, so the 20-minute presentation I mentioned will cover these topics. We'll go through an introduction, a general plan overview to give you an update. This essentially is a culmination of a 2-year effort, and this is partly just the robust nature of it is being brought to because the city applied for and received grant funding from the state of California through the local early action planning grant. So that grant helped us fund the consultants that we have on the team, have on the line today. We'll go over the extensive community outreach that was done, and then give you an update again on the land use element that we've had numerous discussions on, also touch on the safety element and the new environmental justice element, and then answer any questions you may have. Next slide, please. All right, and then just to go over the team that's been working on this, we can't list everybody on this slide, but myself and Alex Hadagi, our senior planner, have been the primary staff contacts on this. But I also like to thank the numerous city staff that have collaborated on this effort, also the community stakeholders that have also provided input, and obviously the Planning Commission. There's been a lot of time that you've set aside through this process as well. The consultant team, primarily Harrison Associates, as listed there, they've focused on the housing element update, safety element update, the environmental justice element, and CEQA compliance. And on the line today, we have the project manager, Dima Galkin. We also have Darren Neufeld and Kristen Blackstone from Harrison Associates. I'd also like to thank Hida Mosesman and Erlanda Martinez for their contributions as well. And then last but not least, City Place Planning. They were the consultant firm focused on the land use element. And we have both of them available online as well today. I'd like to thank Claudia Tetford and also Patricia Blumen for their contributions. We've made it a long way. We haven't reached the finish line. There'll be numerous updates following the general plan, but I'd like to credit this team for being the first in our county to have a certified housing element, and we haven't stopped since. We're now at the point where we're implementing that housing element and making updates to our land use element. So just again, really like to thank the team, and they're here today to give you an overview of what we've been up to. So With that, I'm going to hand it off to Dima to lead the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Scott. So my name is Dima Galkin. I'm a senior project manager with Harrison Associates, coordinating this general plan update on behalf of the consultant team and for the city. And I'll start with a quick overview about general plans and a little bit of information about the work that we did. So general plans, per state law, every city and county must have a general plan. And the general plan serves as a blueprint for the community's development, providing a long-term vision. And that long-term focus is an important aspect of general plans. The sort of short term is handled over the counter by the planning department, but this process really focuses on that long-term vision for the city. And general plans can be thought of as a book in which chapters are called elements. And so each element generally has goals, policies, and actions that are intended to help realize that long-term vision for the city. It's important to note that all the elements must work together and be consistent with each other. And there are some required and some optional elements. The city's general plan includes all of the required elements. And for the current update process, we are updating the land use and safety elements, and we're adding a new environmental justice element. And earlier this year, we helped the city to update its housing element, which isn't part of the package for consideration today, but I bring it up because it was an important driving force in the updates of the other elements. So just as an example, there are certain updates to the land use element that correspond to aspects of the housing element update. And in fact, the update of the land use element itself is one of the programs that were identified in the housing element. In addition to the general plan update, our team also prepared an environmental assessment as required by the California Environmental Quality Act. The assessment was in the form of what's called a Program Environmental Impact Report. And that report analyzes the potential physical impacts resulting from the policies that are in the updated and new general plan elements. And to ensure that we received input from the community during the general plan update process, our team conducted several workshops and committee meetings, as well as other forms of outreach in coordination and cooperation with city staff. For the land use element, we held 4 workshops hosted by the Planning Commission and or the City Council. And each workshop was used to provide information to the public and or to listen and receive input from the public and city officials. The topics for each of the workshops are on the slide here. We also conducted a survey that was combined with the housing element survey. We incorporated input from local property owners and residents that were received via email or in the workshops. And we had focused discussions with representatives from the Building Industry Association and from Providence Hospital. And for the safety element and environmental justice elements, we formed committees consisting of city staff, local residents, and representatives from other local organizations and stakeholders. And we also conducted a survey focused on safety and environmental justice. So what was the result of our community outreach and our process overall? Tonight, we're going to provide overviews of the updated and new elements. And we'll begin with the land use element. Claudia Tedford, the principal of City Place Planning, is one of our team members, and she will present an overview of the land use element update. So I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, Dima. Next slide, please. Yes, I'm going to start out with just kind of the basics. What is a land use element? As Dima talked about, it's a required element of the general plan. It's basically the guide for future development in the city and indicates where various land uses should be located, how dense and intense those land uses can be, provides a basis for the zoning ordinance. And also, as Dima also mentioned, it facilitates the update of the 6th cycle housing element. Next slide, please. The land use element has really 4 areas of focus in the goals, objectives, and policies section. And those are balanced growth, economic prosperity, quality of life, and community character. And it also supports and kind of coordinates with all of the other elements of the general plan. Next slide, please. This is an image of the draft revised land use map. I know it's kind of small, but basically the land use map has been updated to reflect the new land uses and some of the revised land uses. And it's really just a overview of where all of the land uses are designated to be in the city. Next slide. Thank you. So the residential land uses were revised in order to provide additional housing opportunities to meet a wide range of needs and support the anticipated growth in Victorville. Again, it coordinates with the housing element. There's a new high density residential land use designation that was added, and it also encourages residential infill in the core areas of city, adding a new low density residential infill housing overlay. Next slide, please. It's maybe a little hard to tell, but there is a triangular shaped area. It's kind of the more established area of town. That's the location of the residential infill overlay. Yes, thank you, Dima. And it's an area where there is currently a lot of development, but there are also some vacant areas that would benefit by having development occur in those areas. Next slide. The updated land use element adds 2 new mixed use designations, and those are really added to provide greater flexibility in the types of uses, and they can be more responsive to changes in the market. It provides opportunities for housing in proximity to resident serving uses such as like commercial areas, schools, hospitals, and also close to transit. And again, it encourages revitalization in some of the underutilized areas of Victorville. Next slide, please. As far as the commercial land use designations, we've deleted one of the existing land use designations, which was the office professional land use. There were not very many parcels that had that designation, and those have been redesignated to other designations. We retained the general commercial land use designation and added some more current allowable uses to reflect current trends. Next slide, please. There were no additions or deletions to the industrial land use designations, but again, it includes expanded allowable uses to reflect current trends. Next slide, please. There are a few new additions to the land use element. One is the new Greenway Utility Corridor. It has been designated along the city's public utility corridors, and it's a great place for trails and with multiple public access points. Next slide. There is also a new health and wellness overlay that has been added. This applies to all of the locations of existing and proposed hospitals and medical facilities. It allows a full range of medical uses and, in addition, complementary uses like restaurants, juice bars, gyms and fitness studios, that sort of thing. It allows a range of housing to be integrated into the development, and it really functions also as a sustainability hub. Next slide, please. The updated land use element also proposes to repeal the Desert Gateway specific plan and then redesignate all of that land. If you could go to the next slide, please, Dima. I think the image shows a little bit better than all the words. The existing Desert Gateway specific plan is shown on the left, and that was actually done when there was a proposed high-speed rail station in that area, and that never came to fruition. The location of that changed and is outside of Victorville. Nobody has come along, no developers with an interest in developing according to the Desert Gateway specific plan areas. So by repealing the Desert Gateway specific plan, it allows for the land uses to be redesignated to look more like what they did before the Desert Gateway specific plan was adopted. And there actually has been some developer interest in building according to the proposed land uses. Next slide, please. And finally, last but not least, we've added development focus areas and opportunity areas. I don't know if you can tell on the slide, but there are some kind of turquoise colored lines on the map that kind of show where the development focus areas are, and within them are the opportunity areas. Next slide, please. These development focus areas really identify locations where key changes to the land uses are proposed. They're areas of existing development that can benefit from targeted planning to help guide this transformation, or they're property that have not yet been developed or where growth is expected or proposed to occur. The smaller opportunity areas were identified and discussed in detail during the land use workshops. And then the development focus areas just sort of organized those opportunity areas in key parts of the city. So each of the development focus areas, and there are 6, has both a vision and some proposed actions to help guide implementation of these areas. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darren.
Thank you, Claudia. I'm going to go through the safety element. Thank you, Dima. The purpose of the safety element is to identify hazards and address unreasonable risks associated with natural and human-caused hazards. There's important legislation that's occurred since the last time the element was adopted. Of note, Senate Bill 379 requires Victorville to address climate change adaptation and resilience in this safety element. To address climate adaptation and resiliency strategies based on a vulnerability assessment that the city performed for this element. And to identify and evaluate sensitivity, exposure, and potential impact on populations in the city of Victorville and on city assets and infrastructure. The next is Senate Bill 1241, which requires us to address wildland and urban fire hazards in the safety element. And this includes information such as fire hazard severity zone maps and information about wildfire areas within the city of Victorville. The last 2 pieces of legislation that are important are Senate Bill 99 and Assembly Bill 747, which require us to identify evacuation routes within the city. Senate Bill 99 asks that we identify residential developments in hazard areas within the city that do not have at least 2 points of egress in the event of an emergency situation. And Assembly Bill 747 casts a bit of a wider net, and we have to identify evacuation routes and assess their capacity, safety, and viability under a whole range of scenarios, hazard scenarios within the city. Next slide, thanks. The hazards that pose the most significant threat to these sensitive populations in the city of Victorville are extreme heat, wildfire, and drought. Climate change is anticipated to create more extreme heat events. However, the city is committed to providing cooling centers and extreme heat warnings to help residents stay safe during these extreme heat events. Climate change is likely to bring about more frequent and intense wildfires as well. However, the city is committed to implementing citywide ordinance and codes that provide protection from wildfire. And then climate change is also expected to create more frequent and intense droughts. However, the city is committed to instituting water conservation efforts to sustain natural resource availability to residents, both current and planned in the future. Now I'll discuss briefly the environmental justice element. The intent of the environmental justice element is to address the needs of disadvantaged communities through objectives and policies that reduce unique or compounded health risks, promote civic engagement in the public decision-making process, and prioritize improvements and programs that benefit these communities. Disadvantaged communities are low-income areas that are disproportionately affected by environmental pollution and other hazards that lead to negative health effects, exposure to these hazards, and or environmental degradation. As a result of this, they're more likely to suffer from lower quality of life and worsened health outcomes compared to areas that are more affluent. Disadvantaged communities were identified according to state models and methodology which required an EJ element for the city of Victorville to be performed. Next slide, please. California government code requires the general plan to evaluate environmental justice if these disadvantaged communities are present and after 2 or more elements are updated. The intent of the law is to consider the fair treatment of all people and improve the quality of life for people by reducing exposure to these hazards and importantly, improving access to goods and services. The government code defines environmental justice as the fair treatment of all people, of all races, incomes, and ethnicity, with respect to development, adoption, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. In practice, pursuing environmental justice involves improving the quality of life of people by reducing exposure to environmental hazards and burdens and improving access to goods and services. I'm going to discuss the main findings next of the environmental justice element. The disadvantaged communities have greater exposure to air pollutants, generally due to their proximity to high traffic corridors and industrial areas with industrial activity. They generally suffer disproportionately from health impacts associated with poor air quality from these uses. While many residences in disadvantaged communities are not within walking distance of their nearest school or daycare center, these residents are generally within walking distance of transit. Disadvantaged communities have slightly less access to healthy, affordable food compared to other areas of the city. However, there is a high concentration of food distribution sites serving these low access areas in the disadvantaged communities. These communities are generally in the southeast portion or in the southeast portion of the city are considered relatively walkable, and they have more bike paths compared to other areas of the city. However, there are still high numbers of pedestrian and bicycle collisions in these disadvantaged communities, indicating a need for greater safety improvements. Residents in these areas are more likely to live in older and likely lower quality homes and spend a greater percentage of their income on housing compared to other areas of the city. And these areas are more vulnerable to the effects of extreme heat than other areas of the city generally are. A community survey was conducted to identify environmental justice related issues of greatest concern to the community. Respondents said that the biggest issues are pollution, so proximity to freeways and roadways, and proximity to industrial uses. In addition, some expressed concern with trash and debris in creeks, rivers, and storms and drainage areas. The next one was health, a lack of neighborhood markets and farmer markets that provide fresh produce, lack of grocery stores that provide fresh food, and lack of affordable and nearby healthcare services. There was a general concern for lack of sidewalks, crosswalks, and safety for people who walk or use mobility devices such as wheelchairs, and then lack of safe bicycle lanes and routes for people to move throughout the city. Safe homes was a concern, generally surrounding lead-based paint in homes and unsafe or unhealthy condition in homes. And then on the city community relations, respondents wanted more information on city proposals and decisions that could affect residents and that these are generally difficult to find. And that concludes those two elements. I'll pass it back to Dean.
Thank you, Darren. So our team is available to answer any questions and to take comments. I would also like to share some information here. So of course, Scott is the point person for this effort, and we want to thank Scott and his team for working with us throughout the process. And so his communication information is on this slide here. And also the link at the bottom of the slide that's available for people who want to learn more about the general plan update and get more details on the process we went through. And that covers everything we wanted to share. So again, we're happy to take questions or comments, and I guess I'll turn over to Scott to see if he has anything else to add.
Thank you, Dima. Yes, I do have one thing to clarify and explain just the sequence that we're currently in and how this will play out. So the first step is to update the general plan. Okay, so if this general plan is adopted, it doesn't mean that that next day that we have all of these land use designations ready for a developer to build on, because the zoning ordinance hasn't been approved for these areas. State law allows us to have a period of time to implement the general plans relating to the zoning ordinances. So, for example, if we were changing an area in our general plan designation from commercial to mixed use, within like the next year, as we work on creating an ordinance for mixed use, that developer will still be held to a commercial standard. So they could start queuing up some mixed use developments if they like, but we would need to get that ordinance in place. So I just want to explain that there's additional time for review of the planning commission on the nuts and bolts of what these land use classifications will be.
And that only affects the land use element, obviously, for the code amendments. The other elements would pretty much be right away, or would there be code changes in code and any of those as well?
Yeah, so like the safety element and the environmental justice element, we would reference those in our code updates to make sure that we're consistent with the general plan. So, like if we're talking about fresh food allowances or just trying to encourage grocery stores in a certain area, and we're adjusting the zoning code there, we need to then analyze that to make sure that we're making decisions that are in concert with all of the elements.
Scott, Zoom members are having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, try to speak right in the mic. So yes, every amendment that we make to the zoning code that will happen after the general plan's in place, we need to make sure that it's consistent with the general plan. This will set the foundation, but all of the zoning ordinances will give the nuts and bolts. For example, it'll give the minimum dwelling size per unit. It'll specify massing requirements, landscape requirements, open space requirements. Those are all things that need to be worked out, and we'll be working on over the next year. So we have fully implemented the general plan.
Thanks. Does the commission have any questions at this point for either the consultant team or our city staff?
Yes. One question, and that is these conditions that are found in the disadvantaged communities. Is there a city committee that's going to be working on coming up with solutions or recommendations? Or is this something that staff is going to be doing?
There was a committee put together as part of drafting the environmental justice element. There's really no plans to use them moving forward since they've already provided the guidance. The environmental justice element has the principles in it that we can implement. We could look at that in the future if we feel that it's needed. But what we expect is as we take forward these amendments, the Planning Commission will be reviewing that, and our staff reports will analyze how these amendments that we're bringing to you complies with the environmental justice element, the safety element, the land use element, the housing element, you name it. We have to make sure across the board, whatever amendment we're making, that it's consistent with all of the elements in the general plan.
Thank you.
And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up the public hearing for any testimony at this point. Do we have any speaker cards?
We do not.
Is there anyone online that would like to comment?
No, there is not.
Okay, I'll then close the public hearing, and I'll bring it back to the commission for the determination and a motion. And before we do that, though, I'd like to, once again thank, the entire consultant team that has worked many, many months on this, along with our city staff to get it to this point. And like Mr. Webb said, that we were the first in the county to be a little bit ahead of the game and to be in compliance and to be at this point. So thank you all for that. And we'll be looking for a motion at this point.
Commissioner Cook Askins to make a motion to approve item number 2 as presented by staff.
Commissioner Thomas, second.
I have a first by Commissioner Cook Askins, a second by Commissioner Thomas. I'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Cook Askins,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas, Vice Chair Harriman,
Aye.
Chair Kurth.
Aye.
Motion passes with Commissioner Messon being absent.
Thank you very much. And that's a big step forward, and it moves on to the council now, right?
Correct.
Okay, thanks everyone. Next up is item number 3. It looks like there's a continuance request. Is there anything that staff would like to add on this one?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, case number PLN 22-00025 is a site plan conditional use permit that has been previously environmentally assessed by the Victor Valley Wastewater Reclamation Authority to allow for the expansion of the American Organics Regional Composting Facility. Essentially, this proposal is requesting a 20-acre expansion to accommodate composting operations outdoors. This is a result of a expansion that was approved in 2018 to modernize the facility and the operations and add new structures. With that modernization and the addition of new structures, they need additional space to accommodate the actual composting of the material as they proceed forward. This continuance request is being brought to further address comments received by the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board. Those comments noted a list of measures that need to be addressed by the applicant. Some of it even require monitoring on site. So there was a delay in completing those prior to tonight's meeting. Based on that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission conduct a public hearing, receive testimony regarding the proposed project, and continue the public hearing to the Planning Commission's December 14th, 2022 meeting.
Thank you. Any questions to staff on this proposed continuance on this project? Seeing none, I will open up the public hearing. Do we have any speaker cards?
We do not, and I don't have any speakers via Zoom.
Thank you. Then I will leave the public hearing open, and I will make a motion to continue this item to the Planning Commission's December 14th, 2022 meeting.
Commissioner Thomas, second the motion.
I have a first by Chair Kurth, second by Commissioner Thomas. I'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Cook Askins,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Vice Chair Herman,
Aye.
Chair Kurth.
Aye.
Motion passes with Commissioner Messon being absent.
Thank you. Next, moving on to new business, item number 4. Staff, please.
Thank you, Chairman Kurth. Item number 4 is a new business item. It is a request to allow vinyl fencing and changes to landscaping standards for single-family residential development. This is applicable citywide. At the Planning Commission's October 12th meeting, there were some representatives from the Building Industry Association that requested time to present their request related to allowing vinyl fencing and also requesting consideration of alternatives in our landscape standards. In the staff report before you, we gave a summary of what was previously discussed last year related to vinyl fencing. We've also attached the BIA's submittal related to vinyl fencing. Since the October 12th meeting, staff has had a chance to meet with the BIA and discuss the concerns with the landscape standards. We've since resolved that issue. There was a misunderstanding relating to a stipulated rock size. Initially, the BIA thought that we dictated a 3/4 inch rock size, and at one time we did. But the current code does not dictate a minimum rock size. However, for single family homes, it does dictate that each front yard landscaping have 3 differing rock sizes within the front yard. That could range from decomposed granite to boulders. So again, we've resolved that issue. I believe this discussion today from the BIA will focus on the vinyl fencing request. But with that, staff's available to answer any questions you may have on landscaping or vinyl fencing.
Thank you. Any questions at this time for staff? Okay, then with that, I'll open up the public hearing. Is it scheduled that we have a presenter tonight first? You know?
Yes, I believe we have Carlos Rodriguez from the Building Industry Association. He is requesting an approximately 10-minute presentation.
Okay, let's start with Mr. Rodriguez if he's on the line.
Mr. Rodriguez has co-host status, so he can unmute and provide any details he wishes.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and all honorable planning commissioners. First, I want to thank staff for taking the time previous to this meeting to clarify the landscaping concerns, and also want to thank them for helping to coordinate today's presentation. And if I am, just wanted to confirm that I have been granted the ability to share my screen. And it looks like I'm going to try that right now. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, wonderful. So just respectfully, we'll start with just a general overview of the quality of vinyl fencing, and then I'd like to have in our presentation Jennifer Chung with Pacific Communities comment and during the presentation, as well as Brad Kay with FenceWorks. And just want to start off by just highlighting for your consideration, our request is to bring back a resolution for consideration and to allow for further discussion and deliberation. Our request is for the Planning Commission to allow us to have a more robust discussion about this issue beyond today, and to direct staff to bring back a resolution for consideration. One of the benefits we believe as highlighted in our fact sheet of a vinyl fence option over the next 24 months as a pilot option would be the durability first and foremost. Vinyl fencing is a proven product that withstands the elements of all 4 seasons, as well as affordability to the homeowner. A block wall mandate is cost prohibitive in terms of material and labor. This added expense decreases affordability and increases the barrier to home ownership. It is also consumer friendly, easily replaced. The only fixed portion of a vinyl fence is the post, which has a minor footing. Homeowner maintenance of a vinyl fence is much less than block walls. It's also can be customized, as vinyl fence typically comes in a tan or almond color. However, there are also alternative options as well. Vinyl fencing takes up less space on both sides of the fence, whereas a block wall could be up to 6 to 8 inches thick. Also, it is the industry standard. And Victorville, we would urge consideration to align with what the consumers, first and foremost, as aspiring home buyers are seeking and requesting and wanting, and as well as what we see as available to homes throughout Southern California, and would really urge the consideration as we see other multi-million-dollar home examples of the type of product that we would like to bring to Victorville, the same type of quality vinyl fencing. I'd like to conclude again with just our goal would be that a resolution would be brought back for consideration, and that would highlight developments in single-family subdivisions, would provide a 6-foot high vinyl fence option. Vinyl fencing would be constructed within the interior of all new residential developments and subdivisions, including all interior side and rear lot boundaries and street frontages, without front-on units except along all street-facing side yards within a single-family subdivision. Vinyl fencing also would be allowed along the interior side and the rear property lines within a single-family subdivision, as well as along the rear or side property lines. Would not be required along lot lines that are abut a property zoned or use as open space recreation. In some summary, as I transition to Jennifer Chung, we are not advocating to eliminate block walls. We're advocating to be more strategic in the requirement, particularly using vinyl fences in between homes. So again, we think it's the best of both worlds. We could still have the block walls, but we also want to be smart in how we utilize that and be mindful of homeowner preference and industry standard. And with that, I'll shift to Jennifer Chung with Pacific Communities for more on the advantages of vinyl fencing as we're recommending. Jennifer?
Hi, Planning Commissioners. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak tonight. Just to kind of piggyback on what Carlos had just said and our previous presentations to the Planning Commission, we have, again, used vinyl fencing in all different markets, including some of the pictures that Carlos had shown were from LA, Ventura, with our $1 million product. So this is indeed a very popular option that we have used everywhere. We also have successfully used them in our high desert communities like Lancaster, Palmdale. So we know that it really stands the test of time and also different elements, including high wind and all of that, which Brad from Fencework can speak more to in a little bit. Actually, we also have used them previously in our project up in Victorville. We have a project on Village in Blue Canyon, which we used vinyl there. And we feel like after visiting it recently that it has really stood the test of time. Like Carlos had said, this is the industry standard. There are so many different colors. It's durable. We find that it's very maintenance free. And just from our experience alone, we've never had any warranty issues or homeowner complaints regarding our vinyl fencing. And as you may know, our builder warranty, we have to service for at least 10 years of customer service. And again, we have never really had any service requests or service calls regarding this vinyl fencing. And just as a side note, this issue has been brought up last year. It was urgent then, but we really come to you now because it has really come to the forefront of our concerns. Previously in the past, we were talking about on a financial standpoint, $6,000 to $8,000 a lot for block walls. Now we're talking with pricing $16,000 to $20,000 per door for block walls. That's a huge jump. And as you know, from a recent report, actually, the Rhinus report, for example, there were only 4 net sales this week in Victorville and Hesperia alone across 17 communities. So you hear it every day that the market is dropping, but prices unbelievably, costs for materials and labor are still going up. And so we actually have a community that's slated to be open, but we are looking to probably mothball this until we can get a better handle on the market and the prices. So we urge you really to hopefully take this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. We'll move on to Brad Kaywood, FenceWorks, for just some more details about the quality, durability with the vinyl fence product. Brad?
Our product is predominantly comes from Plygem, and they are the industry leader in vinyl windows and siding. And they do have the market picked when it comes to the quality at which the titanium oxide contents, which reflects light and or retains the rigidity and the quality of their fence. They happen to give a limited lifetime warranty on that product. FenceWorks operates statewide and uses this product statewide for the last 15 years. And as Jennifer alluded to, there is little to no customer service. It is a product that stands the test of time and one that we believe in and are proud to install. Additionally, on the wind loads can be different in different areas. You could vary from 85 miles an hour all the way to 135 miles an hour. We can combat that with steel inserts in the vinyl posts, which help with the rigidity of it. And we can also shorten the centers on the posts, and also we can increase the rigidity of the fence by putting steel inserts in the top and bottom rail, which is what we do in the Devore area, which sees gusts up to 130, 140 miles an hour at times. And we've had great success with that there. But all in all, it's a product we do believe in, and I think it would do best in the desert area, especially with the heat conditions. Other than that, that's about all we have to add, unless you have any questions.
Brad, before we conclude, I think there was an example of a wind knocking over a block wall, and how was that handled?
It happened in, it was a corner lot up in the Devore area. The block wall, actually, it didn't fall all the way over, but it was a good foot out of plumb. The builder had taken it down and then asked us to put our fence in line because the fencing we were doing in between the homes had no issue. Again, steel inserts, the centers were a little bit shorter, and it worked out great for everyone, being a cost-effective way to go in addition to having a quality product.
Well, as we conclude, and certainly would be if the chair or other commissioners have questions of a technical nature, Brad's available for that. If there's questions about the overwhelming preference by home buyers with respect to this being the dominant type of product that is highlighted in multi-million-dollar homes and entry-level homes across Southern California, we'd be happy to answer that. But I think it's really important to underscore, number one, we're not eliminating block walls altogether. That in particular, as we see this example in between homes, that's really where it makes the most sense to implement the vinyl fence. That we're asking for this to be a 2-year option, to bring back any assessment within that period of time, within the 2-year period. Bring back any concerns that there might be relative to, we have not experienced those, whether it's Pacific Communities or FenceWorks, but if there were, by chance, issues of animal control or things of that nature that have been expressed in the past about concerns, while we've never seen that occur with respect to the product throughout Southern California, that's something that we could take a look at and assess over this pilot 2-year period, and then make an assessment based on facts and not speculation. So again, we respectfully request that you would bring back a resolution, allow for greater discussion, and hopefully with your consideration, allow for this option for those who are looking to have an American dream in Victorville, be a homeowner in Victorville, and not have the unnecessary barrier to home ownership that this as an unintentional consequence, but nonetheless, it is occurring. And we have dire concerns that this policy, if not adjusted for all the reasons we discussed, as far as the quality of the product, if it wasn't addressed, would indeed inhibit and if not kill projects moving forward into what we anticipate being a slower market. Thank you for your consideration, and we would urge your consideration. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, for your presentation. Does the commission have any questions for this applicants based on the presentation?
Yeah, I have a question for the fencing contractor.
Okay.
You mentioned assessment of facts. Are you telling me that you think the rigidity of that fence is equal or more than a block wall?
When you're talking about, there's two different types of rigidity. There's one that's concerned with or recommended with wind load. With wind load, yes, but when you're going to go put up force, pounds per square foot force, no. Meaning, can you go take a bat to it? No. Like you could a block wall? No, you absolutely cannot. But if you're talking about something that'll stand the test of time and wind and the elements, absolutely. Point for point.
That the vinyl fence is stronger than the block wall.
That's not what I said.
You said the wind shear, it withstands the wind shear.
Correct.
Better than the wall.
However, on an impact point, if you were to take a bat or
I'm not
or
talking
a
about an impact, I'm talking about wind shear.
yes, wind shear, yes.
So you
So
are
winds,
we
yes,
have
but
the
a
engineering-
baseball bat, no.
We have the engineering statistics to support that.
that the fence can withstand more wind shear than a block wall.
Or equal to.
That's all.
Any other questions?
What is the projected lifespan of the vinyl fence in the high desert?
It will be typically 25 years before the product deteriorates to a point where you will get minor chalking after 25 years and or the UV inhibitors start to wear.
Okay, thank you very much once again. Do we have any speaker cards?
We do not.
And anyone wanted to speak on this one online?
No, we do not.
Okay, then I'll close the public hearing, public testimony on this one, and I'll bring it back to the commission for a determination or any further discussion. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we're kind of looking at two possibilities here, either maintaining the current code standards or proceeding with a code amendment and a draft resolution. Is that correct? Those are the two options.
That is.
Do we need to make a vote on that?
Actually, there's no required direction. If you just want to receive and file this information, that's fine as well. But if you want to take a stance, either way.
When you say receive and file, what
you're just basically receiving this information. There's really no action that the planning commission needs to make. If the planning commission were to initiate a code amendment to consider removing block walls and replacing with vinyl, you would need to direct staff today, and then we could come back at a later meeting and publicly notice that hearing for you to formally review proposals for a code amendment. But if you want to speak, if the commission as a whole is satisfied with the current standard and wants to put that on the record, that can also be relayed to the council if the Building Industry Association also brings this forth to the council. So it may be better to provide your input now, so if this does make its way to the council knows that the planning commission has first reviewed this information and has direction.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. These individuals have worked for a couple months now to get their information in front of us and to ask. They're clearly asking for something, and so then I think if we don't need to go to a formal vote, I would like to get a feel from the commission as direction to staff. Are there commissioners here, and if so, you can speak up, that would prefer or would like to proceed with possibly initiating a code amendment, which would change our current standards, and then would ask to see a new resolution.
Mr. Rodriguez, did I hear you say something about a pilot program?
Yes, sir. What our hope was is that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir. What our hope was is that a resolution, you would provide direction to staff to bring back a resolution next month. And that our hope is that it would be recommended to adopt said resolution, which would provide the option to have vinyl fence in the code for a 2-year period. A 2-year pilot period is, again, what we were looking to not make this permanent, but we would like to allow for duration of 24 months as a pilot to assess how this has been received. And again, if there were any concerns, that we could address those at the time being. We wouldn't anticipate that there would be concerns, but again, the pilot period, this is not an open-ended request, sir. It is, again, for a 2-year period, temporary option. And so we're using the term pilot for that context.
And if I could, Chairman, I'd just like to explain that a pilot program, it would still require a zoning code amendment to our municipal code. So it would be looked at the same. It would just have a sunset date of 2 years is what they're proposing. But obviously there'd have to be a lot more analysis if we went down that way. You know, I mentioned in the report that this standard's been in place in Victorville since 2007. I know they mentioned it's the industry standard. It may be more prevalent in other communities, but you know, the city of Victorville has the ability to make their own standards. This has been in place since 2007. There's been roughly over 2,000 homes that have been built with block walls, even on the interior block, and even on the interior lot lines since that has been adopted. So essentially, it is the industry standard in Victorville. So if you unravel that, what are the implications? You know, what does the public feel about, you know, the block walls that they've been receiving? There may be future homeowners that expect block walls, but they're going to get vinyl if this is changed. Realizing though that there's more macro influences right now that are affecting the housing industry, there has been discussions of the housing industry going through some type of reset. So I do think that there would need to be more analysis if we went down that way to consider vinyl fencing. I'd like to also reference the prior item that we had earlier about in our land use element. There was a fiscal and economic impact analysis that looks at development through 2045. And we realize that mainly housing does not produce the revenue to cover the services. So even minor things, or people may think it's minor to change from block wall to vinyl, has an implication on the amount of services that are provided. Last year when we brought up the issues of animal control responses. As you understand, we talked about impacts to fencing. The block wall's far superior. It has a footing along the bottom, so we could expect that sticking with block wall is going to have less service requests for animal control, less drain on city resources. On the flip side of that, that could, if we went vinyl, that could, create more of a demand for city services. So we need to look at these, analyze these things. But again, I've yet to hear someone from the planning commission or city council to give direction on this standard. It's been in place since 2007. And as mentioned in the staff report, when we compare ourselves to other communities, we're far surpassing the amount of development, even with our high standards with block walls. So I just want the planning commission to consider that, and I know it may come across as a pilot program, but that request after the 2 years is up will still be there from some developers to use that vinyl fence option.
Yeah, I think that the reason last time when we saw this request, I was not in favor of the changing to the vinyl fence, and that is, not that I don't appreciate our builders in this community and the need for housing and the extreme cost that things going up makes it tough on all of us, certainly a home builder. But looking back over my career as a planning commissioner, the commission and the city, we've made a lot of changes, a lot of upgrades along the way that are major and important. But the two that always have stuck out in my mind have been, 15 years ago, the mandating a block wall, because the fencing in Victorville has just always been a real problem. The other one was when we decided to eliminate roof shingles and we went to, the stronger concrete or clay tiles. That stands the test of time as well, and that just makes a big difference in our neighborhoods, I believe. So for me personally, I have to lean towards wanting to keep our current standards for now. And if the commission has any other direction other than that, please speak up, because now's the time for us to advise staff and council.
I would like to see the stats. I do not believe that that fence can stand up with wind shear like a block wall. I just don't believe that. I don't like hearing things that, if you can supply those stats, I'd be more than happy to look at them. And I would just also mention that erosion, the block wall does stop erosion from going underneath the fence.
Okay, then if there's no more comments, does that give you enough direction?
I believe so. I do think this item will make its way to council. So, I mean, if it's possible to get on the record from every commissioner how they feel on it,
yeah,
that would help.
Do I need to do that through a motion or an informal poll?
A motion would be fine.
Then I would make the motion to maintain the current municipal code standards.
Commissioner Cook Askins, second.
I have a first by Chair Kurth, a second by Commissioner Cook Askins. I'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Cook Askins,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas,
Aye.
Vice Chair Herman,
Aye.
Chair Kurth.
Aye.
Motion passes with Commissioner Messon being absent.
Thank you. Next item is item number 5.
Thank you, Chairman Kurth. Item number 5 is a report on current Victorville Municipal Code commercial cannabis standards. At the September 14th meeting, there was a request from the public to consider a retail cannabis establishment at the San Bernardino County Fairgrounds. So before you tonight is a quick summary of our current municipal code standards, with the caveat there was a slight modification that addressed fines and penalties for illegal marijuana grows that was added to this ordinance. But in summary, the 2017 ordinance that's attached to the staff report is still intact. In general, it does not allow any type of commercial cannabis activity, with the exception of the delivery of medicinal cannabis from licensed facilities that originate outside of the city. There still is the majority of cities within the state that prohibit retail cannabis, and to the commenter or the proponent that was requesting a minor exemption from this current stance or current municipal code standard, I would like to add that it may not be that simple to just add an exemption for the fairgrounds. One thing that would, or a couple of things that would need to be analyzed is the operational standards. What the locality has the ability to provide conditions for that business to operate. That would take some time to develop. Also a fee structure. We also want to make sure that the establishment pays their fair share and ensures that the property, the use does not become a drain on city resources. But again, we're just providing the report as asked by the commission. I'm not sure if the commission wants to have more dialogue on it, but we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just a little confused with this, so maybe you can clarify for me. So,
Can you speak into your mic, please?
so they're requesting the ability to sell cannabis at the fairgrounds to smoke, to consume.
Yes, most retail establishments would have ones that are topical. They're edible. They're also smokable.
Well, so this is just for events. This would be if somebody in town wanted to not go to Adelanto, they could just go to the fairgrounds, and this place would be open for business for them to come in like a regular dispensary.
That is my understanding, that it would function as a dispensary.
Okay.
Any other questions on this one? Okay. We had asked, if I remember correctly, at the last meeting, there was a letter that we received, and we did hear some testimony today. Thank you for that. And it kind of piqued our curiosity to remind us exactly where our code is, and that, thank you, did remind me. I forgot about part two, that we're allowed to have deliveries, throughout for medical throughout our city. So I think that's all I needed to know. Anybody else have anything else on this item? Otherwise, we're just a reviewing and filing. Okay. All right, then I will move on to presentation of reports. Commissioners and staff, and we'll start with Commissioner Thomas. Anything to report?
None at this time, thank you.
Commissioner Harriman.
No.
Commissioner Cook-Haskins.
Just thank you to Mr. Webb and the staff for their work, and also want to wish all the veterans a happy Veterans Day, and look forward to seeing a lot of people at the parade on Friday.
Yes, definitely. And I'd just like to say that we have one of our commissioners, as we all know, has stepped up and gave a good sacrifice to run for an elected position within our city, and that would be Commissioner Harriman. And I don't know if anyone knows the exact results yet, but I would say, win or lose, thank you very much for caring about the city that much. I wish you best of luck on that, but either way, I know it's a lot of hard work. So, thank you.
It was.
Any comments, staff?
Yes, I'd like to echo your comments as well. It's great when you see somebody step up that lives in the community and has put that effort to give a good public service. I'd also like to mention that we're starting to transition away from Zoom as an option with throughout all of our committees, commissions, and the city council level. This will become effective at our next planning commission meeting. There still be maybe time to time where we may need a consultant to zoom in and give their expertise. But this is based off of the governor's notice that he will be removing the emergency declaration due to COVID. So I just wanted to make you aware of that, and we'll be pushing more information out to the public so they're aware as well, so they can make their way in person.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good night. Meeting adjourned.